Another very lovely morning to all of you, my great friends. I'm ever so thankful that you all could join me. We left off at the end of Daniel 5 with the fall of Babylon and Daniel being about 90 years old at this point. He is promoted to the highest position that he's ever been. He's basically likened unto Joseph in Egypt, but he interprets the writing on the wall. A few hours later, Cyrus comes in, takes over Babylon, and sets up the Median king, the lesser king, Darius, to rule over Babylon. And apparently, these two, Darius and Daniel, become good friends. And it is there that we pick up in Daniel 6:1. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old, 62. And over these three presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and the king should have no damage. So Daniel is made, once again, his right-hand man. But there are two other presidents besides Daniel, and these seem to envy Daniel, because he's not of Babylon, he's of Israel. Then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. Then the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault. For as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. There are very few figures in all of mankind's history which can have such a testimony. Albert Barnes said, "This is an honorable testimony to the fidelity of Daniel and to the uprightness of his character. If there had been any malversation in office, it would have been detected by these men. They observed him very closely to see for any slip up, and they found none. Then said these men, We shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God." Alexander Maclaren commented, "However unobtrusive and quiet a Christian person's life may be, there will be some people standing close by who, if not actually watching for his fall, are at least by no means indisposed to make the worst of a slip and to rejoice over an inconsistency." This is the reason why Paul says, "Remain blameless before God and man." I know so many unbelievers who would just love to witness all Christianity collapse, but even individual Christians, they just watch for that one minor defect and pounce on it. But in this narrative, we see a type of Christ, unto which we'll come to at the end of this chapter. Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king and said thus unto him, King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors and the princes and counselors, and the captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute, and to make a firm decree, that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. So they're saying, we've written up this bill, this law, this decree, in which says that no man may pay homage to any god except the king. The king's the only one that has total freedom. So they're willing to even go against serving their own gods in order to catch Daniel. This is really ingrained hatred against Daniel. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing, that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. He did this in so much haste. A great leader, I believe one of the attributes of a great leader is that they think the matter over before any harsh decision. And that should be applied to everyone. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house. And his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime. Adam Clark commented on this. Solomon, in his prayer at the dedication of the temple, had entreated God to hear the prayers of those who might be in strange lands or in captivity, when they should turn their faces towards their own land, as Daniel's doing, which God gave unto their fathers, and towards the city which he had chosen, and the house which was dedicated to his name. John Gill, I believe, rightly observed in his speculation of why his windows was open, his windows being opened, not to be seen of men, but that he might have a clear view of the heavens, where his God dwelt, to whom he prayed, and be the more affected with the consideration of his greatness and glory. That's very likely. One must remember where Daniel is located. He's in a very pagan ran society, and it would seem that the only place that you could really look towards in order to escape and just for a moment get out of the environment that you're in would be to the heavens. I have no doubt that that was one of the factors with this. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. Then they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree. Hast thou not signed a decree that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, save of thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, The thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not. Then answered they and said before the king, That Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regardeth not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but maketh his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased with himself. Upon hearing them accuse Daniel, he doesn't get angry like Nebuchadnezzar did against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. No, he does the exact. He gets angry at himself for making the decree. This shows the friendship between the two. When he heard these words, was sore displeased with himself, and set his heart on Daniel, not against him, to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. He paced back and forth. How can I make Daniel innocent? He didn't want to do this. This was his friend. Once again, Joseph Benson commented, He set his heart on Daniel, a very strong expression, implying that his anxiety to save him was so great as to throw him into an agony, endeavoring to find out some exception for him from the law, and being in a great strait through the necessity he was under to have the law executed, and the regard he had for Daniel. This would be very difficult. I remember I heard it said once, it's very hard to be a king. This is not an easy thing to lead so many people. Then these men assembled unto the king, and said unto the king, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians is, that no decree nor statute, which the king established, may be changed. Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel, and cast him into the den of lions. We always hear Daniel in the lion's den. I mean, that's not inaccurate, but to be more specific, it would be Daniel in the den of lions. Because you can have a lion's den and no lions be in it. It's just a reservation for lions, but you could have fish in there, or gnats, or flies, or anything that you wish. But what Daniel was cast into was a den of lions, meaning this is a den and it has lions in it. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. Once again, McLaren commented, Weak men bluster. Heroic endurance has generally little to say. Without resistance or a word, the old man, an hour ago, the foremost in the realm, is hauled off and flung into the pit. If you'll notice, Daniel doesn't make any defense of himself. He doesn't say, well, I'll stop praying. He doesn't do that. It's just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They said, it's not going to do you any good, king. You do to us what you will. We'll serve God, whatever. But just an hour ago, he was the foremost in the realm, the right-hand man. This would be like the president taking the vice president and having him executed. He's hauled off and flung into the pit. So, down in the dark there, with the glittering eyeballs of the brutes round him, and their growls in his ears, the old man sits all night long, with peace in his heart and looking up trustfully. Imagine that, all night long. You're down there with these wild lions, and they're starving. I mean, just give careful consideration unto it. Just imagine yourself down there, and it is dark because they cover the den with, and there was probably a little bit of a light because they had to have some place for the air to filter out, but not much. And the stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. He didn't even sleep nor eat. Neither were instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. He couldn't sleep, he was in agony. Matthew Henry said, "The best way to have a good night is to keep a good conscience." I heard it said once that the rich man eats good, but the poor man sleeps good. Charles Spurgeon observed something very curious. In any case, he said, Daniel must have had a glorious night. What with the lions and with angels all night to keep him company, he was spending the night watches in grander style than Darius the king. I would say that Daniel was more at ease than we think. You have to think, Daniel thought that this earthly life, the trials of it, would finally be over. That's what faith does. It strengthens you to that point where you're not looking at death, but at life. Then the king arose very early in the morning, and went in haste unto the den of lions. Once again, John Gill observed, he did not send a servant, King Darius, but went in person, and with as much expedition as possible, though a king and an old man. This shows the great love and strong affection he had for Daniel, and his concern for his good and welfare. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? Then out of the darkness Daniel said unto the king, O king, live forever. What a shock that would be. Daniel just sitting there patiently. That is not done overnight. That takes a lifetime of being with God, of being that faithful and that calm. Benson said, Daniel does not reproach the king for his unkindness to him and his easiness in yielding to the malice of his persecutors, but to show that he has heartily forgiven him, he meets him with his good wishes. Observe, reader, we must not upbraid those with the unkindnesses they have done to us. Totally agree. Do not repay evil with evil, but overcome it with good. Now pay close attention to these verses. My God, Daniel says to King Darius, hath sent his angel, and hath shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me. For as much as before him innocency was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. I totally agree with Joseph Benson on this. My God hath sent his angel, Daniel said. The same bright and glorious being that was seen with Shadrach and his companions in the fiery furnace, no doubt, had visited Daniel, Christ himself. I have no doubt. And it is likely an visible appearance had enlightened the dark den, kept Daniel company all night, and had shut the lions' mouths, that they had not in the least hurt him. And what a great friend. I love the song, What a Friend We Have in Jesus. There's no friend like Jesus. He's there when everybody else desert you. It's incredible. Then was the king exceeding glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in his God. And the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions, them, their children, and their wives. And the lions had the mastery of them, and brake all their bones in pieces, or ever they came at the bottom of the den. Now this is a controversial verse, but we must also take notice that it was not God whom commanded any of this, really, but King Darius did this in a rage and haste. Albert Barnes said, there was nothing more natural than that a proud despot, who saw that by the force of a law which he could not control, he had been made a tool in subjecting the highest officer of the realm, Daniel, and the best man in it, to peril of death, should without any delay wreak his vengeance on those who had thus made use of him to gratify their own malignant passions. John Gill said, the lions devoured them before they came to the bottom, or the lower part of the den. This was a plain proof that it was not through fullness or want of appetite that the lions did not fall upon Daniel and devour him. Obviously, these lions were starving. They were very much apt to eating anything thrown down there. Then King Darius wrote unto all the people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, Peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble in fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and steadfast forever, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivereth and rescueth, and he worketh signs and wonders in heaven and in earth, who hath delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius, and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Daniel didn't live much longer after this. It's very well thought. The events of Daniel's life come to a close after chapter 6. From now on, though, from 7 to 12 in the book of Daniel, we're going to be reviewing Daniel, the prophecies that are written. And oh my goodness, I was up till 3 in the morning last night just trying to wreck my brain over Daniel 8. But we'll come to all that, Lord willing, in the next study. God of peace be with you all. Amen and amen.